Good morning, and thank you all for joining us here today. I'm online with Police Chief Laron Singletary to deliver a very important message about this coming Memorial Day weekend. I am happy that we are seeing some return to warm weather this week. But before I do that, I want to recognize all the people that we have lost and in our military that have been fallen soldiers in our military that we will recognize this weekend and celebrate their lives. Having many members of my family serve in different branches of the military, I understand the challenges that those members of the military's family and those members that are currently in the military face. And so I want to thank them for their service. I want to recognize those that have lost their lives for our protection and for our freedom. And let us not forget this weekend who we are celebrating and whose lives were sacrificed for us to enjoy the freedom that we have here in the United States of America. I know that we're all going to be happy that we're returning to some semblance of warm weather this Memorial Day weekend. And it will give us a chance to get outside to enjoy the beautiful weather and hopefully shake off some of the winter blues that so many of us have been feeling, especially those that have been uh, quarantining because of the coronavirus. But we have to be smart about it. We must remember that COVID-19 is still very much among us. The virus is still within our community and it's still spreading. It will not take a vacation, and it's up to us to protect our circle. We all must do our part. As the weather gets nicer, we cannot take our eyes off of the ball. In fact, this is the time to swing through the ball, to follow through so that we can finish and finish strong. So, what does that mean? I want you to go outside and get some sun, but also I'm asking you to wear a mask. Stay at least 6 feet away from those who don't live in your household. Remember, 6 feet save lives, both yours and those you love. Do it for yourself and others. Avoid crowded places. Wash your hands with soap and water or use hand sanitizer. And track your symptoms on rockcovid.org. If you're feeling ill, stay inside and avoid contact with others. As much as possible, limit your contact to those that live within your household. If you do attend get togethers with others, and the governor has said no more than 10 people, I implore you to keep your groups very small and stay 6 feet apart and make sure everyone is wearing a mask. Every household in our city should have access to a mask by this weekend. We began we began mailing masks last week, and that process should be nearly complete. In addition, we will be distributing mask and social distancing literature in certain corner stores and pickup restaurants beginning this week so the owners can offer masks to customers who arrive without one. Rochester and the Finger Lakes region are working through phase 1 of Governor Cuomo's New York Forward reopening plan. We all want to see us get to phase 2 and beyond as quickly as possible. We all want the beauty salons and barbershops, I can attest to that, to open up. And we all want our churches to open, and we all want to go to restaurants and sporting events with our family and friends. We all want to be in a position where this can be over and we get back to our normal lives. The reopening phases are based on the metrics and the data tracked by the state. One large gathering could very well become the epicenter of an outbreak that would drive those metrics in the wrong direction. Yes, our region is performing well. That's why we are in phase 1 right now. But don't let that performance create a false sense of confidence. Let's not fool ourselves. This crisis is definitely far from over. The numbers, as you see, are still going up, especially as more people are getting tested. The number of hospitalizations are rising. It's up to us to stop the spread of COVID-19 so that we can get through all 4 phases of the governor's plan. After all, we're Rochesterians. We're not strangers to adversity. We've been through difficult times before, and we've gotten through them by working together. We control our own destiny because we have the ability to adapt to change. This Memorial Day weekend represents many wonderful traditions for us as the unofficial start of summer. We all love our family get-togethers, but we can't let those traditions stop our progress. The value of a tradition is to create a good memory, and we can still do that this weekend. We just have to adjust and be willing to adapt. It is possible to enjoy the nice weather and celebrate the start of summer in a way that keeps everyone safe and healthy. Let's make sure when we look back on Memorial Day 2020, we not only remember those that have lost their lives fighting for our freedom, but we also remember the joys and the moments that we spent with family and friends by keeping them safe and protecting our circle. Now I'm going to turn it over to Police Chief Singletary to talk about how the Rochester Police Department will help educate people and the importance of social distancing this weekend, especially as we start to open up some of the public spaces. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll certainly echo the mayor by saying we cannot get complacent with COVID-19 as we move forward. This is going to be a cultural shift for each and every one of us. We need to continue to practice social distancing, stay 6 feet apart, wear your mask, and take every precaution possible to protect our circle. We have to be socially responsible to one another and have the individual responsibility with this. We must be accountable to one another, as the mayor said. And we cannot control how anxiety comes at us, but we can control how we respond to it throughout this whole COVID crisis. We have to adapt to living in our new normal, a world that still has a high rate of infection and contagion as COVID-19 still exists among us. So what we've been doing in the RPD is working with our partners in government and also our community partners, the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, the Director of Public Safety, our other partners in government, Pathways of Peace, and clergy members to help us pass this message along. So this weekend, our mission from the Rochester Police Department will be to patrol Charlotte Beach, Durand Beach, as people will frequent those locations throughout the city. We'll have high visibility patrols to ensure that people feel safe. Memorial Day weekend often brings serious automobile accidents, and sometimes people exercise poor judgment and get behind the wheel of a car in an intoxicated state. So we will have stop DWI details out. There's always a slogan: drive sober, don't get put over. Overall, RPD is going to do our part to educate the public to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. And so we'll continue to educate. It's all about mitigation here. The holiday gatherings are going to occur. We just want people to be safe, as the mayor pointed out. But we know, based on what we've seen out in the community, there are people who are still sometimes not taking this serious. And we want people to limit the spread of COVID-19. That is why you have seen every elected official, every leader in government continue to use our platforms to be repetitive in our messaging, because if we continue to not take it seriously, then we have to shift mentalities from what if we catch the coronavirus to when we catch the coronavirus. So the goal for us this weekend will be for everyone to enjoy this weekend. It's the first major holiday during this COVID period. The weather will be decent, like the mayor said. Depending on our social distancing practices, this weekend may be a true barometer of how quickly we transition from being stagnant to how quickly we return to some sense of normality in our community. We have been in this status quo since March 16th. It's about 11 weeks now. People are ready to return to some fun in the sun and enjoy the approaching summer season. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We can answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Our first question will come from Brian Sharp at the DNC. Brian?
Yeah, this is for the chief or the mayor. I'm wondering how, and I know we've talked about this before, but in addition to high visibility, will officers be getting out of their cars to address large gatherings? Or how will you be, when you come up upon a scene that maybe too many people are there, or they're not practicing distancing or don't have masks?
So
I'll let the chief answer. I'm sorry, go ahead, Chief.
So one of the things that we've been continuing to do is educate the public. If we come across a large gathering, that's already taken place, we'll continue to educate. We'll continue to talk about the safety measures that people must take during this COVID-19 period. Obviously, if we know about a large gathering that's going to occur that's in a public setting, we will try to reach out to the organizers, try to prevent such. But there are times when we do have those large gatherings in a public setting, on a public street, sidewalk, that we do not know about. And neighbors do call and say that the gathering is blocking the street or blocking the sidewalk, or there is a noise calls for people being loud music. So we do have to respond to those and we address those. But again, we will not be taking people to jail for social distancing or not wearing their masks. We will continue to educate throughout this process.
Ryan, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I was just, well, follow up to that, and then if I could, but will you be dispersing those groups? And then I was also wondering if Mayor, if you could talk more as you mentioned some literature to certain areas. I was wondering if you could talk more about how you decide on which areas to distribute that to, and a little on that effort. But first, are you dispersing the groups when you come upon them, or just handing out literature and telling them to do better?
A little bit of both, Brian. It's a little bit of both. We will continue to educate, and part of education is talking about the prevention of the spread of the coronavirus. We need to do everything that we can to mitigate people from contracting the coronavirus and passing it on to family members at home. This is about individual responsibility. We all have a responsibility to be accountable to one another. And like I said earlier, it's just not about people who are on the corner. It's just not about themselves. They have to worry about when they go home to a loved one who may have an underlying condition, or a family member who is elderly. And as we've seen lately, just you don't have to be elderly to contract coronavirus. So I think sometimes just people are not taking it serious until they see it in their own household or family member. And as the mayor pointed out, the hospitality rates are rising.
And so to answer the second part of your question, Brian, what we have done is our Pathways to Peace team, as well as our neighborhood service centers, they have information and they are distributing it across the city to open businesses. And we will continue to do that. We started that a while ago, mostly in some of our more challenged areas where we know that people did not have access to masks. And so we were giving out at our food distribution sites as well. We will continue to make sure that we try to educate people on social distancing, wearing a mask, but also to help those business owners that have someone walking in to encourage them to say, hey, listen, you need to cover your mouth. Here's a mask, and to offer one. We have spoken to some of our businesses and they have indicated that that would be helpful. And so we're trying to do our best to help people protect themselves and help our businesses stay open and remain viable during this time.
Great, thank you, Brian. Next question will come from Jeremy at the City Newspaper. Jeremy.
This may be a question for the chief. If there are large gatherings on public property, on city property, will you be breaking those up, or just educating people, as you put it, on social distancing and all of that?
We will be educating people. We will be continuing to use our partners in government, Pathways to Peace, clergy members, community organizations. I always talk about we cannot do this alone. Just like fighting crime, the police department cannot do it alone. In this public health crisis, we cannot do it alone. I think that's why I alluded to earlier. You have every elected official, every leader in government using their platform to continue to provide messaging that we need to do our part. We need to protect our circle. We need to make sure that we do not continue to pass on COVID-19. This is obviously still occurring in our community. We don't want people to get a false sense of security that COVID-19 is still not among us.
Thank you.
Jeremy, do you have a follow-up?
I don't. Thank you.
Great. James Brown from XXI will have our next question. James?
I understand there will be no arrest, but will it be ticketing?
I'm sorry, James, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
No.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Just barely, and I don't think that our sign language interpreters can hear you as well. So can you talk up just a little bit?
I understand that there will be no arrest for not social distancing.
James, I'm sorry, we're still struggling with you. Why don't you check your mic and we'll come back. We'll move on to Kayla and come back to you, James. Kayla from Channel 8 for our next question, please.
Yes, hi, thank you. So I was just wondering, for whichever of you wants to answer, but will beaches be at half capacity, or how many people are going to be allowed there this weekend?
As of today, the governor has not set those guidelines. I know that he said that the beaches will be open. However, he has not given us specific instructions that I know about, and I don't know if the chief has received anything. But I do know that the police chief will be working with the county of Monroe to develop a plan. So we don't have numbers at this point in time, or how we plan to, or the governor's direction on how to accurately to police that particular function. But we do know that he's indicated that beaches will be allowed to be open. I don't know, Chief. I know that you've been working on this all week. Do you have anything different?
No, it's pretty much the same thing that you said, Mayor. We have been working with the Director of Public Safety and our county partners to patrol the beaches this weekend. We will have high visibility patrols out there this weekend. And, you know, part of it, if we see large groups gathering in a not safe manner, we'll continue to go up, talk, educate, and hopefully try to talk to people in preventing the spread of coronavirus. And, you know, hopefully they have the adequate PPE equipment with them.
Kayla, do you have a follow-up?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to Tanner at Channel 13. Tanner?
Hi, good morning, Mayor and Chief Singletary.
Good morning.
This question, I think, more suited for Laurent, but Laurent, talking about patrolling and that, I mean, let's say, you know, we've heard from the governor that crowds of 10 people might be okay, or gatherings of 10 people. But I mean, let's say if somebody calls the police on a gathering at a house, a barbecue that might have 15, how do you respond to that? You know, how should police respond to that?
We'll continue to educate. You know, private property is treated differently than public property. When people are in the confines of their own property, within the confines of their four walls of their homes, you know, there's certain restrictions that the police department has. You know, I talked about throughout this whole process, COVID-19, since we've been through this, because we're in a pandemic, people's constitutional rights and civil liberties do not go out the window. And, you know, the police department that's first and foremost in people's minds, just like I know in every law enforcement agency across this country. But what we ask people to do is be smart about this. And that's what the mayor and I are doing today. We're asking people to be smart about this. This is the first major holiday that is upon us throughout the 11 weeks that we have been dealing with the public health crisis. So we know people are going together. We want people to have a good time, like the mayor said, but we want them to be safe and responsible while doing so.
And has there been, I guess, has there been any communication with the governor's office on any, you know, any enforcement rather than just education? I mean, is there the possibility, I know you said you won't be taking people to jail, obviously, but I mean, is there the possibility that crowds on public property might get a ticket? I mean, I know education seems to be the bigger thing here, but is that a possibility?
Well, I think it all depends on what the situation is. And certainly we take each case on a case-by-case situation. You know, there could be a call for an annoyance. You know, obviously we have municipal code tickets, but, you know, that's the last resort. We don't want to create more of a burden on people during this time. I think the holidays are meant traditionally to be around your family, to have a good time. So we don't want to create that extra burden on people. I mean, people are already dealing with enough through anxiety and trauma and dealing with this. So I think the holiday, if done responsibly, can be somewhat of a uplift to what people have been going through the last 11 weeks. So we're not going to create an extra burden on people with regard to that. But again, when people do call about an annoyance or blocking street, you know, we do have to respond to that, because there are other people who live in a neighborhood who they share the street with, and who they share the environment with. So we want people to be responsible and just be socially responsible to one another.
Thank you.
Your next question will come from Patty at the Minority Reporter. Patty?
Hi, thank you, Justin. Chief, what kind of response have the officers been getting when they do come up to people and, as you say, try to educate them? And is the sense that you're going back to the same groups of people all the time to continue to have to re-educate, in a sense?
I think you know, as we pointed out earlier, there are certain areas of the city where we do see it's a challenge for some, and I think continually, for the most part, we see people cooperating. when we pass the message along, for the most part, we see people cooperating. There may be some other factors that lend to people may not cooperate. We know that this weekend, people will be out having a good time. People may be drinking and things of that nature, but we continue to exercise patience throughout this process. And we know this is new for everybody, but we have been continuing throughout this whole COVID-19 period to educate people. Sometimes we do have to go back to address the same group, but again, throughout this process, social distancing, wearing of the PPE, we have not taken people to jail for it. We have not issued tickets for such. We would just continue to educate.
As a follow-up to that, there have been in the last few days, there was homicides, assault shootings. We get notices of weapons being taken off the street. What effect is COVID having on potentially uptick in some neighborhood difficulties? Is COVID kind of exacerbating that because people now are closer together, and if there's a score to settle, it's easier to find the person to settle the score?
I think law enforcement across the country has been dealing with that. That has not been unique to Rochester. The men and women of our department continue to go out there and aggressively, go after individuals who want to wreak havoc in our community. We have taken a number of guns off the street. We have arrested a number of people who have been involved in some of the non-fatal shootings that we have seen. So we will continue to do our part. We want people to, obviously, and we've been talking about this throughout this entire process, be responsible, be socially responsible to one another. Unfortunately, we have seen people in this community who do not believe that this pandemic is real, and they are out there creating havoc on our community. But, the RPD will still continue to do what it has to do for people in this community who have a right to be peaceful in their own homes, in their communities, and be safe.
And I just want to add to that, Patty, and to echo what the chief has been saying. We have a responsibility to one another to exercise compassion and to also be understanding. We understand that people are frustrated and they have anxiety. There's a lot that's going on. Many people have lost jobs. They're homeschooling. A lot of different things have changed in 11 weeks. And we need for everyone to take a step back, to check your anger, and to go for a walk if you need to. Losing a life or acting on a particular situation can have lifelong complications for you and your families. And we want you to be safe above all things. And so we need your help in that. Any dispute is not worth going and getting into an argument and getting into a fight with someone, or even shooting or taking another person's life. Your family loses and the other family loses. And we all have to make sure that we're being responsible for the people that we love. And part of this is protecting your circle by your actions. You can control what you do. You may not be able to control what somebody else do, but if each of us take responsibility for our own actions, we will be a better and a stronger community. And during this time, whether it's violence or going out and hanging out and not exercising a correct social distancing and wearing a mask, you are making a conscious choice to put your family and yourself in harm's way. And we're asking you to make a different decision. Take a step back, go for a walk. It's not worth it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next question will come from Mary McCombs at Spectrum. Mary.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Chief. Thank you for taking our questions. My first question, I want to go back to the Chief. You talked about certain areas of the city where you believe, people are being cooperative. But what about those sections of the city where we've seen people not cooperate with your officers who are out on the streets? We had incidents of rock throwing. This now becomes a safety issue, not only for your officers who are out there trying to protect people, but it becomes an issue for people in that neighborhood. What is your message to officers who are going to get back in their patrol cars, get back out there this weekend with anticipated crowds, I would imagine.
Yes. So, the instances you talk about, luckily have been isolated. It's not the norm in our community. Like I said, there are things that are coupling the actions of some in our community. But the community has responded well. When they see large groups, they do call 911. They give us a heads up on situations that we may not be aware of, and we try to address them as quickly as possible in a safe manner for all. My message to the officers has been this, continue to go out there, exercise patience, continue to talk to individuals in the public and educate them about what we're trying to do as a department. I've been out in the media. I've been out in the community. I know the mayor has as well. And we're just trying to pass this message along for people to do their part. When you talk about behavior, it is hard to control one's behavior. So only thing we can continue to do is exercise, and we don't want to criminalize behavior that is meant to save lives. We talk about this being a public health crisis that is matching up against the criminal justice system. We will continue to educate and do that. And I think that's what law enforcement agencies across, I think, the country have realized that this is a public health crisis, and we have to be conscious in coming up with some of the decisions and make sure that we don't make the solution to the problem worse than what the problem already is.
And I just want to add something, because I want to be very clear that lack of social distancing or people not wearing masks is not just happening in certain neighborhoods of the city. It's happening all over our community, and not in the city, in the county, in rural areas. So we are all in this together. And we're not going to have one set of standards for people that live in certain neighborhoods and a different set of standards for people that live in other neighborhoods. That's just not going to happen. And so we're going to treat everybody fairly and equally, and we're going to make sure that we're educating people no matter where they live, no matter what, where they're from. And I think that it's very important that we not try to criminalize certain people in certain neighborhoods for not exercising social distancing, but that we together collectively as a community do what we believe is best by educating the entire community about social distancing. And when we see large crowds, giving them the information and handing it to them and saying, hey, listen, we understand that you miss your friends, you want to talk to them, but you have to be 6 feet apart. If we have masks, provide those masks. But with that's the approach that we're taking, because we're not just going to criminalize a certain segment of our community.
My follow-up question is for the mayor. We talked about this being the unofficial start to summer. I guess maybe some guidelines for people, like where can people in the city go? Like what's open, what's not? What would your suggestions be to families looking to celebrate and be together, as you know?
So the governor has clearly outlined what phase 1 looks like. We are not completely open. Our parks are open, and they have been for families of less than 10 to gather. And so they can do that. The governor has outlined and put forth the plan that he believes is best for us to open safely. Our message to our entire community is to exercise safe judgment and to be aware that gatherings of 10 or more are not permitted at this point in time. If you want to go and sit with your children on a park bench, you may do so. But the fact of having a complete gathering of 50, 60, 70 people at a home or in a park or in any gathering is not permitted at this point in time. So we're asking people to be smart, to be aware that you can do certain things, but do it in a way that is responsible, that is taken into account that this virus is still very active in our community. Wear a mask. There are many restaurants that have a grab and go, where you can go, order, pick it up, and bring it back home. Sit, in my neighborhood, I've seen people sitting on the front porch. I've seen people walking around their neighborhood. I've also saw people at the park. And so we have to make sure that we are exercising great judgment during this time to protect each other. And we are going to get additional guidelines from the governor as to the beach and other places, hopefully before the weekend hits, so that people will have that available for them. And we're going to continue to educate them on those new changes as they come down from the governor's office.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next question will come from Patrick Mucinek at Channel 10. Patrick? Patrick, you're still muted, Patrick.
Sorry about that. Chief Singletary, good morning. This question, I'll start off with you. I noticed that the public will see increased police patrols, places like Durand Eastman Park. Will the public see officers physically walk the beach or observe the crowd from the perimeter?
We'll be out interacting. I mean, part of this process is part of engagement too. You know, I mean, we've always done engagement since the beginning of time. You know, so, you know, we'll be out talking to the public and engaging them and asking them how they're doing throughout this process, how they're doing this weekend, how they're celebrating this weekend. You know, I mean, we're humans. You know, I mean, part of our job and part of what I expect officers to do is to go out there and engage the community. You know, this isn't us on the sidelines. We're all in this together, like the mayor talked about. So, you know, we're going to see officers out on horseback, you know, on foot patrols and cars and the like.
All right. And then my next question is for Mayor Warren. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
I received my package yesterday from City Hall on my face mask and census form. So I know you talked about it earlier, but basically we've been getting a lot of phone calls at the station from people who said they haven't received theirs yet. If you could reiterate what you said earlier about getting your face masks from City Hall.
So in the last week and a half, we have actually mailed 96,000 masks and not 96,000 masks, but mailed to 96,000 homes. And we're relying on our partners in the Postal Service to deliver those. I do know that all of them have been packaged. They have been actually dropped off to our postal partners. And we hope that everyone would get theirs, you know, within the next couple of days if they haven't gotten it thus far. I have received a number of calls saying that people, I received it. I live in this neighborhood. I live in 14609. I live in 14619. I live in, you know, in certain neighborhoods and zip codes. So I'm not sure how the Postal Service actually distributes those or puts those in the packet, because we just send it. If you notice your package, it doesn't have your name on it. It just says postal customer. And so I'm not sure how they actually divide where they deliver those to in the time frame, but our hope is that they will have, everyone would have received their package by the end of the week. We do know that they have all been sealed and delivered to the postal department for them to be delivered to our residents. And many people have received them. And we would ask that you, if you haven't received it by Friday, that then you may want to call 311 and let us know. But we anticipate that there may have been some delay just giving the amount of postage that we have mailed out. But people have received those. We ask that you also wear the mask properly. I have seen a number of people that have not been wearing a mask properly, meaning the mask has been under their nose or even under their chin. And so we need for you to cover your nose and your mouth and securely have the mask below your chin and on top of the bridge of your nose, so that you can protect yourself and protect your family. So please wear the mask and wear it correctly so that we can protect our circle.
Thank you.
Very good. James, we'll try James Brown from XXI. Hopefully his mic is working. James, you want to give it another shot?
Can you hear me now?
You're still very light. Give it a shout.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
All right. This is about the incident that happened over the weekend with the young girl. I'm wondering if you have any response, Mayor or Chief, to the statement from Loretta Scott and Willie Lightfoot about asking for further investigation.
First, I'll respond and I'll let the chief respond. You know, I have a daughter who's almost 10 years old, and from that perspective, and even if I didn't have a daughter that was 10-year-old, I don't think that handcuffing a child is something that we should do. You know, I think that the council president and the chair of public safety and vice president have outlined that they would like for us to do some research on policy as well as to review the incident. I know that the chief has already indicated prior to receiving that he was going to review the incident as well as look at the policy that we have. And I definitely agree with that. I think that we have to make sure that as adults that we not put our children in situations and in harm's way, and that we protect them from trauma. And we recognize that trauma is lifelong, and experiences that children have when they're young can impact them well into adulthood. And so we want to do everything possible as a community to work together to ensure that our children have the best possible future that they can have. And that starts with each of us working together to ensure that they have a safe, loving environment in a community that acts as a village and protects them and lifts them as we climb. And that's what we're dedicated to, and that's what we're going to continue to work to do. Chief?
I think like the mayor said, and I know Vice President Lightfoot and Council President Scott has indicated, you know, I've asked for a review of the incident. Part of the review is looking at policies and procedures. You know, many people have looked at the video. I've looked at the video, the deputy chief has, the commander, the captain, the lieutenant. So it's been through several layers of review internally. And, you know, part of our review is going to be looking at policies and procedures. And I think like the council president and vice president said yesterday, we want the process to be fair for everybody.
And my follow-up is just the idea of 10 or more gathering. There's a lot of concern from our listeners about that, that it may be a bit premature as we see hospitalizations rise. Obviously, that didn't come from you guys, but are you worried at all that these gatherings, that an increasing amount of gatherings, may knock us off our trajectory as we move through the phases?
So I want to be clear. The governor said 10 or less. He did not say 10 or more. He said 10 or less, no more than 10 people. The reason why we are actually providing this information to the public today, on Wednesday, is because we want people to be prepared. And that being prepared is recognizing and letting them know that this virus is alive and well in our community, that there are things that we individually can do to make sure that we protect our circle. Those things are the things that we outlined before, both the chief and I. Make sure that if you are gathering with 10 or less people, that you are wearing a mask, that if those people are not of your household, that you are staying within a 6 foot distance or 6 feet distance, that you continue to be smart and not do things that would jeopardize you or your family by taking this virus home, that you not gather without those safety precautions in place. And so there are things that we want our people to, in our community, to be prepared for. And that's why we wanted to get ahead of the weekend and let people know we understand it's getting warm. You want to see your friends, you want to see your family. Be safe, but also be smart and protect your circle.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. That was our last question. Is there anything you or the chief would like to add before we close?
Chief, is there anything that you have?
No, I'm okay. I'm good, Mayor. Thanks.
I just want to say I recognize that it's getting warm. We're starting the summer, and that behaviors start to change because it's getting warm outside. We have to be smart. We have to make sure that we're doing everything possible to keep each other safe. And we all have an individual responsibility to protect the circle and the people that we love. I'm going to do it. I'm asking everyone in our community to do the same. We are all going through the same thing together. But I know that if we continue to listen to what the officials, the health officials are saying, as well as the directive from the governor, we will be safe and we will be stronger as a community for it. So be well. Remember what we're celebrating this weekend, the lives of people that sacrifice their life for us to enjoy the freedom to even be with our families, other families, lost loved ones. So take that to heart and remember you can protect your community and your circle by doing the right thing. And you know what the right thing to do is. Thank you.